So, why a game development studio? That's like the first place I wanted to start. Like, what about a game development studio is like interesting for y'all to work within for a comedy show?
Yeah, I can tell you that I had zero interest in it at first, just because I have this other show that I've been doing for a long time, and I was approached by Ubisoft, who they were interested in doing a show that took place in the industry. We weren't 100% sure what that meant, but I said, nah, it's not really my thing, I don't think. And they said, why don't you just come up to the studio in Montreal and check it out? And I'd never been to Montreal before, and I thought, I don't know, first to go up to Montreal for the first time and check it out, just to go visit the city would be cool. So I went and I walked in, and I'd grown up playing games, and I have kids now. We play a lot of games, but it just never crossed my mind that this would be an interesting place to set a show. And I went into the studio, and one of the very first people that we met was this guy, and he had this kind of long hair and this big beard, and he had rings, like 15 rings on each hand. And he said, hello? I said, hello. I said, what do you do? He said, I'm a creative director. I said, oh, what does that mean? And he thought about it for a second. He looked at me, and then he looked out into the distance. And I create worlds. I was like, can you excuse me for 1 second? And I called Charlie, and I'm like, we're making a show. This is incredible. And that was sort of the beginning of it. And then, the more time we spent with people, certainly at the studio, but then in the community, we realized, well, number one, how passionate people are, not just about playing the games, but making them. And how similar that is to our industry, where you have people working very hard to create content that other people are engaging with. But then, more importantly, I just look back through popular culture, and I haven't really seen a show or any movie that really took the gaming industry seriously, and that it wasn't just used as the butt of jokes, whether the gamers themselves or the people that work in the industry. And I thought, well, that's bullshit. I mean, clearly, as one of the stats that we brought up from the very beginning, this is an industry that dwarfs the traditional entertainment industry, and there's a reason for that. And it's a global community. And we thought, well, if we're going to do a show like this, we want to make sure that we treat it with respect and honor the size, scale, and the community thereof. And so that was a really, really important aspect of it for us. And then after we executed the first draft of the first script, we thought there might be a show here, and Apple agreed.
So when you talk about the game industry, like you mentioned that you worked with studios, you did some study there. Like, how much did you look into bringing those like real world things in? Because I mean, in the show alone, we've got mentions of like workplace harassment. We've got mentions of like crunch and that sort of thing, like overworking for the release of stuff. Like, how much did you look into like the controversies that also surround the game industry?
Yeah, quite a bit. I mean, we wanted to make sure that the show was accessible to a wider audience, right? So that even if you didn't play games or care about the industry, that it would still resonate with you. And so that we wanted to make sure that it felt like an office, just any, a workplace comedy, that if you had a job, you recognized a lot of those people that you see, there's a lot of personalities, if not the specifics of the gaming industry, just the fact that there were human resources, just having to navigate your relationships with your coworkers. We thought that was really important. But then beyond that, to make it feel authentic, we wanted to make sure that we were capturing those things that the studios themselves are really grappling with, beyond just the interpersonal dynamics amongst the employees, but specifically things like crunch, which we deal with in a very real and big way at the end of the season. When you realize that there are people out there working 60, 70 hours a week to make these games possible, and what are the ramifications of that, and what's the fallout from that, and what does that do to the psyche of the employee and the individual. So that's just one example, but we have many of those, and that's why we brought people like Ashley aboard.
I was going to say, Ashley, you've got experience on the game side of things. You've done a lot of voice work. You've seen what the dev side is. Did you bring a lot of that into your role as a tester?
Yes, but also I'm a writer on the show, so that was also sort of my font of knowledge in the room. That, along with Jason and Danielle's here from Ubisoft, but to sort of help bring that authenticity and to talk about issues that are relevant to gamers and to be authentic to the experience of game devs. But yeah, certainly with testers especially, there's you go in with such a love for games. That's part of the reason that you start, is because you love games and you love playing them. So that was definitely an aspect of it.
Awesome. And Charlotte, you've got such an interesting role, like playing kind of the counteraction to like, I'm going to get it wrong. It's Ian. The whole
Ian.
I
know, it's ridiculous.
You just watched a whole half hour of it.
That's how ridiculous it is.
I was watching it and I was like, how do you even spell that? Like, what? That doesn't phonetically make sense. So
It's like 15 letters.
IAN.
So you play like a really interesting role as kind of the foil to him, and it seems like going into the future of the season, you're going to kind of be this like more grounded perspective, but also like playing, you know, he wants big picture, you want recognition for what that is. And how did you kind of prepare for that role and get into that mindset?
Yeah, I think from Poppy's perspective, Ian is the foil to the thing that she created, which I think it's interesting, like often the most charismatic person in the room, or the person that does that big picture, big, shiny, sparkly stuff often gets the most applause, and I think she definitely feels undervalued, and is sort of like, she's the person that makes this entire game possible, but her job is like boring compared to world builder, so she doesn't get the kind of credit she thinks she deserves, which is fun. I feel like everyone's felt like they deserve more credit than they get, right?
I'm curious, did y'all play games on the set? Did y'all like between takes and stuff like that? Did you ever get into that?
Ashley has Switch in her trailer.
Yes. Yeah,
What were we playing right at this stuff?
we were playing, I think I brought Mario Odyssey and a lot of Mario games.
And then you got me onto Stardew Valley.
Yes.
And it was like, it was a bad thing for me. Because there were like multiple times where I would be playing and people would be like, okay, time for you to be on set. And I would be like, just 1 second. Like, I'm about to die like on the like 40th level of the mine. And I need to like get home before I do because I got so much good crap.
One of the worst things that happened to me over this past year was finding, one of the best / worst was Skyrim. So I came in and I said, Ash, like, what's the one right now that I haven't played that I have to play? She's like, Skyrim. So I'm like, oh, all right, I'll check this out. Good Lord. I mean, the immensity of that game. And I couldn't wait to get home, you know, to get back into that world. And my son would watch, he would play with me, and we would watch, and we were just like, and just next thing I know, 4 hours have gone by, and I'm supposed to turn in a draft the next day, and I'm looking for Outway, man. I gotta find this motherfucker. I did that. Control park house. So,
This is awesome. You can't just kill him.
I said I didn't kill him. I said I didn't kill him.
This is a dragon.
I didn't kill him.
This is the headline.
You gotta be careful with the shit you say here. And the moral choices you make in video games.
Can we talk about a moral choice for a second, because you brought this up the other day. Okay, we were talking about Last of Us because we were playing.
Are we cool with spoilers? I mean, it's been out for a million years.
Yeah.
Okay, so you asked me a question as we were, because I had just finished it, and you asked me a question
Right.
at the end, which was?
I asked him if he had any sort of moral conundrum about killing an unarmed man trying to do his duties in the service of saving Ellie. And Rob had no qualms. He immediately was like, yeah, I shot everyone. Not only did I shoot him, I went and shot the nurse that was
The nurse begging for her life. Yeah, I just walked up and executed her.
like, oh my god, I want to save Ellie, but not at this cost. And I put the controller down and I was thinking, and Rob,
At what cost? You have been mowing down people the entire
they
game.
were not trying to kill me. Their arms were like this. They were like, please. They're asking me, they said, please. They were asking you, begging.
She does beg for her life.
Rob shot him in the back of the head.
And it was so satisfying. There was so much love. Like maybe skull cap. I'm not sure. But the way you phrased it was, what did
Moral
you do?
flashpoint,
Like,
yeah.
I didn't even know that there was a flashpoint. I walked in and just started killing. That's the whole point. That was the whole point of the game, was to save Ellie. I don't give a shit about these.
A little bit closely
can't wait
to
for the next
Joel.
one.
Like too closely to Joel, I
When's
think.
the second one's coming out? They pushed it from February, right?
Me.
May. I'm gonna kill everybody there. I'll find as many nurses as I can. I'm gonna take them all out.
This is my boss. Someone call help.
So why MMO? Like, why an MMO RPG? And not, like, a brutal murdering simulator like The Last of Us. But why, was there a particular reason you liked the idea of an MMO RPG as the setting and for like a game?
We just wanted to make sure that there was a communal play, and that it wasn't just. For as much as I love Last of Us, it's one of my favorite. Actually, beyond pretty much all of what Naughty Dog does is I'm a huge fan of. It just felt like, yes, there's a community of people that play those kinds of games, yet it didn't feel like we had as much opportunity to have people playing the games at the same time that we could access as a fan base. So that's what we went using sort of World of Warcraft as maybe our, I suppose that's sort of like our
Reference point.
reference point.
Should we talk about Pootie Shoe? Tell me about Pootie Shoe. Why? Like the idea of him as like this representation of just YouTube in general. I mean, the name phonetically, I feel like we can all maybe draw some comparisons to certain people.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But do you think that's like an interesting dynamic to look at for the show? Is, you were just talking about like having some nerves seeing the gamers in here, and I think we all in the audience know that gamers can certainly react to things in hyperbolic ways. And so what was it like kind of like getting into that mindset of like seeing that side of the industry and trying to explore it in a funny way, but also like looking at it honestly, like this kid is literally like yelling, calling your stuff crap and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple ways of looking at it. I think, first of all, when I started doing like my research and looking into a lot of the streamers, I think it's easy to look at people and say, these children have too much power and control over the industry. And my take was, I don't know, I kind of love it. I feel like it puts so much more power back into the actual player's hands, as opposed to something that we've seen traditionally, certainly in our industry, which is that there's so much power given to the studios and or the executive producers and or the people that are making things, and then they're sort of put out into the community, and there's not, yes, you can get a certain level of feedback, but prior to the last 10 or 15 years, because of the advent of social media, everybody was sort of just a recipient of the information that was coming at them, and there wasn't a tremendous amount of opportunity to give a lot of feedback back. And yes, oftentimes that can be exceptionally toxic, but when it's not, I think it can be incredibly empowering for the players, the people, the fans, the people who want to engage on a level that they don't traditionally have the power and control to do. So I look at somebody like Pootie Shoe, and yes, we're playing it for comedy, but I think that is a very important role. And I think that community feedback is a very important part of the process. So yes, whilst I am a little bit nervous and I fear some backlash, but you're going to get backlash no matter what, I think we've created something that pays homage and respect to the community itself, and I think that people will pick up on that.
I think I'm being given the rap sign over there. I can see through those giant lights clearly, so I believe Mom's spaghetti. I think we're taking community questions now, so if somebody has a question they want to holler out to the cast up here. I saw a hand go right up, right there.
Yeah, hi. I was wondering, because I did recognize some of the assets from Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Obviously, you guys worked with Ubisoft. Could you comment a little bit on, the animation and putting that side together to get Mythic Quest and have that look like an MMORPG and have like a tangible feeling to it?
Yeah, so the game itself, and you see when Pootie's digging the penis, and a lot of the shovel stuff, that really is a sandbox that was created by Ubisoft. So there is, and yes, it's taking assets from games that they've had in the past, but it is a playable sandbox that is a game, Mythic Quest, that we're slowly but surely building over the course of the season and hopefully for the next season, where we're making not really a playable experience, but it's something that we can then go in as the showmakers to utilize to make sure that it feels authentic. In terms of some of the cutscene stuff, yes, For Honor was a big one. Assassin's Creed, Red Dead Redemption you'll see at some point in the future. In fact, there's a lot of games that are outside of the Ubisoft library that we were able to use, because as we went on, we started leveraging Apple's relationships and then my relationships because of Sunny. We were able to reach out to some of these other gaming studios and ask them if we could use them, because we want to make sure, and Ubisoft has been so great about this, that this didn't become a commercial for Ubisoft. And they were very clear from the very beginning that they weren't interested in that either. They wanted something that celebrated the industry. And we felt strongly about that as well. So yes, in the beginning, it felt like there were a lot of Ubisoft assets. As the season goes on, you'll see that we're able to use other gaming assets as well. And hopefully for next year, people see the show and start opening things up. Nintendo was impossible. As you guys know, I mean, impossible. Everybody else was able to, were willing to play ball. But it was a very important part of it for us. We want to make sure that this looks and feels like no other show on TV.
Hello. Right here.
So one of the things I really loved was featuring QA people, like QA testers, because they get forgotten a whole bunch in the industry. And I was wondering what other kind of roles that you think maybe just a general audience who may not know all of the moving parts of the industry that go into building these games, did you that you showcased, like community devs, stuff like that, how expanse is the worker type?
So there are, Brad, played wonderfully by Danny Pudi, is the monetization person, which I think is a sort of weird role that other industries don't really know about, so he's a really central figure. We also have a community manager who you saw in the coming on, the season preview, played by Caitlin McGee, who, she's so funny in the show. But, so we have a community manager that's showcased, and the QA folks, as you said. We tried to highlight folks in all different sections, and especially strange jobs like community management and monetization that are not really shown that they're not present in other industries. But stuff like creative director and then programming also is sort of a stranger role, depending on if you're not in a tech company.
Yeah, the community manager was born out of one of the fact-finding missions that I went up to Montreal and was talking to people, and I met one of the community managers on one of the games, and this guy, he looked like he got hit by a truck. His job is to field incoming communication from players.